A complete unknown. What did I think from a movie critic standpoint? What did I think from a Bob Dylan historian standpoint? That's what today's video is about. In general, good movie. From a historian standpoint, man, they left out so much. And I don't even think they portrayed him like that well. But geez, from just a movie standpoint, if you don't know Bob Dylan's story, this is a good ass movie. All right, two main shout outs here. Timothy Chalamet, the actor who played Bob Dylan, dynamite. Absolute dynamite. You can see the passion, you can see the study, and it was just amazing on film. Him singing the songs, him playing the guitar, and them not essentially, playing the real Bob Dylan song through like, him lip syncing. Dynamite. Okay, it felt like it was like a real movie that you were like following this guy around. All right, Monica Barboza, who played Joan Baez, who was like the second lead role in this movie, dynamite. She was also incredible. The whole cast was absolutely amazing. The writing for this film, I would give it a B plus. Very good. Some funny lines. Once again, if you don't know Bob Dylan's story to a full detail, you're gonna like this movie. Okay, that's really where I come from, the movie critic. I'm not like a film guy, meaning like I don't know about angles of film and if this was as good or not. But just from the average day movie, this was a freaking awesome movie, clean cut, not too long, not too short, covered enough topics. You feel like, oh, maybe I kind of understand who this guy is. Okay, but from a standpoint of like Bob Dylan expert, of which I'm not a Bob Dylan expert, but I know my stuff. All right, when I started writing all my music, I study a lot of Bob Dylan. I collect, some of his vintage first pressing type records. All right, I took a course at Indiana University, of which, anything before the end of 66, like I already knew, didn't need to study. After 66, that's where I stopped listening to Bob Dylan. But those iconic years, 64, 65, 66, I know those pretty much left, right, and sideways. All right, so let's kind of jump into just the things I liked about the movie and didn't like the movie from the historical standpoint. If you're just worried about, should I go see this movie? Yes, go see the movie. It's a good freaking movie. But I did want to talk about the things that I think I liked from a historian standpoint and things I wish they would have done different. Okay, the biggest thing was this film was so well cast, and Bob Dylan's life and his journey is so vast that I wish they would have made this like a three-part film. And they easily could have, okay? They could have made like 61 to 64. They could have made it the start to the folk. They could have made 65 going from folk to rock and the adversity its own year. And then they could have made 66 to 67, the motorcycle crash, its own film too. And I think that would have been dynamite in terms of capturing the understanding of who Bob Dylan is, right? If Bob Dylan saw this film, he would absolutely hate it. Because I think he would take it as a complete hit piece, because they don't really show the good side of Bob Dylan. They just kind of show the asshole side of him, of not communicating with people, having like 3 girlfriends in the same film, and just essentially being negative constantly and just smoking cigarettes, and that being like his personality, which is part of his public persona. Let's be real, okay? It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but I think it would have been cool to show some of the lighter sides to Bob Dylan too, of which they didn't show. And I think, I don't know him obviously, but we know, like, if you look into the story a little bit more, like, those exist, and I would have liked to see those in the film. Some of the things I loved about the film, some of the details of Bob Dylan's life that I loved about the film, was I loved that they showed the relationship between Woody McGuffrey and Bob Dylan. I thought that was awesome. Woody McGuffrey was one of the guys who started the kind of the folk movement, and he was one of Bob Dylan's idols, along with like Buddy Holly and obviously like Johnny Cash. So it was kind of cool to see like their relationship during those times, and him going like to the hospital. I thought that was awesome. Okay, another thing I loved about is they showed like Sylvie Russo's apartment, which is photographed in one of his albums, and obviously she's on the cover of Free Will and Bob Dylan. So to see the apartment behind the scenes, and also see like her and his relationship and what it was like when he was living there, it's just a cool behind the scenes little tad bit of history, especially of his history in his journey. Very cool to see. Joan Baez singing with Bob Dylan on stage, and some of like their communication back and forth. I thought that was really cool, and just to really see like their relationship in general was cool. And because they're both like very intellectual, and I don't know, they have a very interesting dynamic if you go and YouTube them, literally speaking. Okay, the next was just the music in general. The songs they picked and played, they played all the freaking best ones, and it was just cool to see like how good the music was. And you kind of forget, like, dude, he wrote some absolute incredible pieces of music, and this movie really chose the best of the best. So I thought that was just awesome. They dominated and really played great music. All right, things I didn't like in the film, or things I would have changed, was I would have added his creative process. They didn't show his creative process, and they had the ability. They had Joan Baez and him in their apartment. I would have loved to see her playing the guitar and then him essentially on the typewriter writing lyrics, and then them going back together and singing those songs and finding out what things should change. Because that's like the story of like how he wrote all these songs, was half the time he was with her and she was playing music. They had that opportunity. I thought that they missed it, and they should have covered that. I think showing his creative process and his creative genius, I think would have been really good for that film. Another thing I didn't like was, once again, just how cold they showed him. They essentially showed him as a person who like has no emotion and has no positive feeling. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that can be his public persona, but I would have liked to show at least one scene of him being like somewhat soft or have somewhat humanable traits, of which they just didn't show. They just showed a cold guy who writes music that people like, and he doesn't understand why people like that, and so he doesn't like anyone that likes his own music, pretty much. All right, and then the last thing was the Judas moment where people in the crowd are yelling Judas. From my understanding, like, that didn't happen at Newport Festival in '65. That happened in Manchester in 1965, and we know this because there's a recording of it where someone yells Judas, and then he looks to his band and says, "Let's play it effing loud," and then they play Like a Rolling Stone. Okay, you can go listen to that on YouTube. But in the movie, they showed it at Newport. They probably did this because of time, where they're showing the scene where he's playing electric at Newport in '65, and the crowd's pissed, and all the people that put on the festival, it's a folk festival. I mean, singer, songwriter, acoustic guitar only, and he's going out there with a full electric band as the headline act on the last day. So people are completely erupting. All right, that happened, but from my understanding, the whole famous Judas thing did not happen there. But I understand from a film standpoint, they probably didn't want to show that and then show another scene of him getting called Judas, but they know the Judas part is a big part of his story and iconic for that, era, so they put it together, fine. But I'm just saying, I would have liked just a longer movie. Once again, I really think this should have been a 3 movie. If you're really going to document and you're really going to go all out and you're really going to have the best actors in the world, which they freaking had for this specific movie, then 3 movies, 61 to 64, movie at 65, and then 66 to 67, the motorcycle crash, I think literally would have been the best thing to do. And may not have been good for the box office, but geez, if you're going to do something, do it well. Right? If you're going to do something, do it right. And I think that would have been the ultimate path forward. But in general, once again, from a lack of historical understanding of who Bob Dylan is, and you're just going to see a movie, you're going to like this movie. If you're a person who really knows his story, then there's going to be things that maybe rub you the wrong way if you're a true fan of Bob Dylan, okay? 2 other comments here. If you're really trying to get an insight into Bob Dylan, there are 2 good documentaries. The best documentary is Don't Look Back, because there's no one that's like, it's just footage of his 1965 to 66 tour, and you're just going to see the behind the scenes of how he actually interacts with people, because it's filmed. But there's no commentary. It's just like scene 1, scene 2, scene 3 is just people turning on a camera around him. All right, and then you have the other famous documentary, No Direction Home, which is Bob Dylan's start to finish documentary, of which Bob is actually in the documentary himself, talking about himself, and there's people obviously that were around him communicating about his story as well. So that is a pretty good documentary. Once again, Don't Look Back, that's my recommended one. But then the second one is also very good, No Direction Home, which is a famous line, I believe, from Like a Rolling Stone, the song. All right, guys, that wraps it up. Thanks for checking out the video. I also have a sports podcast, Beers by Ivy. You can check that out on YouTube as well. Appreciate the support. We'll keep it going. Thanks all.